when I started my first business, which was AIC was in Hamilton, Ontario. Hamilton was regarded as the armpit of Canada because it was highly industrial. It's 40 minutes from Toronto, but we didn't have staff who were financial services industry trained. And no one was going to come work for some embryonic business, right? No, experienced staff, we had to compete with the likes of the banks, Royal Bank of Canada, CIBC, Manulife, Scotia, Fidelity, the big entities. Why would I? Plus, it's Toronto. This is now Hamilton, a small embryonic business. So couldn't get anybody to come. I thought there's an advantage here because I have an opportunity to really shape the staff that the pickings that I have into how I want them. What I wanted was to propagate a passion, right? Because I started from zero. And my competitors were the major banks and insurance companies in Canada as a Jamaican person, right? So I'm not an attractive employer when you get started. So I had to go through this, obviously, right? So what I did was everybody who when someone came, and I selected people who had primarily the aptitude and the attitude, right? And then inoculated them with the passion for what it is we're doing. Give them purpose. Give them purpose, right? So when you give people, so now you start off with a clean sheet, but what they're bringing is the right attitude and the aptitude, right? And then you just give them a purpose that they can now be passionate about. And whereby, if you bring someone in from outside, they're going to contaminate what your purpose. That's the disadvantage, right? So it took a little longer, but I was able to train people, give them purpose. So we had clones of Mike, right? Not people who are going to say, you know, I know better. I'm coming from our Royal Bank. You're just an embryonic startup. Well, you know. And then I would have been intimidated. I would say, yeah, you're probably right, right? So now let us look at a real life example. NCB. 2002. NCB had 2,600 staff when I took it over. The government had run the bank for 7 years. So no accountability, no sales approach, no creativity, no passion. That's what I got. So no, I had to transform that. So the question was, how do you go from that into a sales machine? So the first thing I did was the following. I had to, big picture strategy, we have to change the culture from being bureaucratic, the entitled, no accountability, work ethic, poor work ethic, etc., right? 2, pumped, purpose-driven, motivated, high energy, creative, sales-oriented. So I had to go from that to this. Entrepreneurial, risk takers, right? That's what I had to do. That was, how do you shift from this to this? I wrote the check on the 23rd of March 2002. This was on a Tuesday. By the Saturday, I had a meeting at the first thing I had to do was I had a meeting at the sports center, National Sports Center, right? I amassed all 2,600 staff members. And I spoke to them for 3 hours, right? And the place wasn't air conditioned, right? So I said to them, look, I have heard that there will be a layoff because this layoff of 800 people, right? Have you heard that? Yes. I said, okay, I'm going to make you a deal. I promise that for the next 6 months, there'll be no layoffs. But the quid pro quo is the following. I want from you, each and every person, every week, you bring in 4 new customers. And nobody will get laid off. In fact, we'll have to hire more people. Yes! That was a start. Bring everybody together, and that was one of the things I said to them. I also said, you know what? We have to change this organization and give this organization purpose. So immediately, we changed the mantra of the bank to NCB, Building a Better Jamaica. So that when you come in to work every day, there's a direct connection you're going to make between what you do every day and building a better Jamaica for your children. So you may toil, yes, but you will toil if it's for a greater good, the betterment of your children and your country, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 1%. We have a card called Key Card. We're going to take 1% of the revenues from Key Card and apply it straight to education. That's what we're going to do. So when you go to the supermarket, don't use cash, because cash doesn't contribute to education. When you go to the dentist, don't use cash, because cash doesn't contribute. Use a Key Card. And we'll take the 1% and apply it to education. So today, we give out tens of thousands of scholarships. We went from 1% to now 1% of the profits of the bank. The first thing was make a nexus between coming into work and a major purpose. Give the staff purpose. Make the staff purpose-driven also. Make the organization purpose-driven. What is that purpose? Then they'll come up with creative solutions and they'll persevere. And it will differentiate you. It will differentiate you as an employer. Every year, NCB wins Employer of the Year for Jamaica. Everybody give up now. So second thing we had to do, strategy, was when my first son was born, took him in Canada, took him to register in school, private school. I got to the headmaster's office. He was 3.5. I noticed on the wall, most of the names, the dean's honors students, their names were foreign immigrant names. And I noticed that 74% of the names were foreign immigrant names. So I thought, it struck me then, immigrants build countries. Immigrants build countries. When Jamaicans emigrate from Jamaica to go live in Miami, there's a 1.5-hour course that is given on Caribbean Airlines to every immigrant. So if you go on the plane and you're a visitor, you don't hear this course, but every immigrant gets this course, right? Because they go on the plane as a Jamaican, they come off of the plane, and they're earnest, they're hardworking, they take on 10 jobs, right? They're purpose-driven, they're creative, they persevere. Yes. Am I right? Yes. So there must be a course that is delivered in that 1.5 hours to transform them. So immigrants build countries. That's why America is so great. Okay, so that got stuck in my mind from seeing those immigrant names on the Hall of Fame. So when I took the bank over, I thought, I need to parachute some immigrants into the bank to recalibrate standards. So they know what a day's work look like. They know what it is to persevere. They know what it is to come up with creative solutions. So what I did, I took people from head office in Canada and parachuted them into the bank to work side by side the natives. We need to acculturalize the natives. So that's what I did. So then this other thing we did was to start training, because Jamaica is not a mecca or a reservoir or for financial services, trained financial services people. So not only did we bring people from Canada, my company, we had a campaign, official campaign, come back home. You have heard of Aubin Hill? Aubin was the first one. I took him from Bank of Oman. He was the CEO of the Bank of Oman. He came here to run the bank. And lots of people came back home. So we had a campaign, come back home. The point is, you have to think about changing culture. You have to look at the advantages you have with the situation that you have. In other words, going back to, you can't find staff that are properly trained, right, with the right attitude. Well, what's the advantage in that? Well, you start looking for people who have the right attitude, and you just have to spend the time working with them and training them. You hire for attitude and aptitude and loyalty. And you know what? You treat them well, you look after them personally, right? And the loyalty will remain, because nobody does that. And the advantage you have right now, you can compete step for step with NCB to pay staff. You can't, right? But the advantage you have is you can, you know what, you can be creative. You can make people, NCB is a large institution now. It has an HR department. It can't treat each individual as you can.
It was public at that time?
Yeah.
It was listed.
Yeah. You have a good question. The question is, how about giving people equity? I don't believe in that.
You don't believe in that?
In other words, trust your stuff first.
Yeah.
As a private company,
yeah.
Forget the bank, because it was public, so we had to be careful about dilution, etc.
Yeah.
But in other words, and you don't want to get into this situation where you're giving out equity, right? You give equity to people who deserve, who have the ownership mentality.
I agree.
Right?
I
If you
agree.
give people equity, they're still agents. They're not owners.
Indeed.
Owners versus agents. They have the agents mentality, right? You're wasting your time.